and welcome to The Report, Cal State Fullerton's premier source for news, views, and info. I'm Morgan Klein.
I'm Sarah Fenton.
I'm Adrian Islas.
I'm Michael Groover.
And I'm Evan Boydston. On today's episode, we'll discuss the controversy surrounding President Obama's proposed immigration reform, particularly in Texas.
Plus, we will talk about a new mandate set forth by the Pentagon, which could impact the fight against ISIL.
And we have the latest on Flint, Michigan, and the criminal charges brought up against 3 officials there.
All this and more on this episode of The Report. We'd like to welcome back Michael Groover. Welcome back. We're excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here again. I'll try my best to fill in for Michelle Vargas.
You're doing
right?
good. The hair matches.
Thank you. Yeah, I tried to match the hair as much as possible. The rest will come, I'm sure.
I wish I had hair like you and Evan. I'm extremely jealous of you guys.
Yeah,
Me
thanks.
too.
Bringing it in the hair. But are you guys excited for the end of the semester? Everything is coming to an end. How crazy is that?
It's coming fast.
Is anybody else graduating this semester?
No, I'm going to stay here forever.
Yeah.
We're both graduating this semester.
For 8 years. Going for 8 years.
Going for that 8-year mark. We officially have 4 weeks left of school.
I know, I can't believe it.
How crazy is
To be
that?
honest with you, yeah. It really flew by. And,
It really did.
4
You know,
weeks left.
that's only 12 days of school for me because I only go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
You
So
know
that's
what?
only 12
Wow.
days.
Bragging again.
He like breaks down the hours. Like, oh my God, this many
It's
hours.
actually 3.3 hours, but anyway. So I'm really excited for that. The end of the school year is approaching, so it's crazy. It's been a crazy ride, right?
Right, right.
Crazy semester.
And moving on to our first story, President Obama's effort to offer temporary protection from deportation to more than 4 million undocumented immigrants is at a standstill in the Supreme Court, and the outcome of the case is still unclear. The latest issue comes with Texas filing charges against the federal government, citing that the president shouldn't be able to go around Congress by signing an executive order. The executive order in question mandates that states must provide driver's licenses to select groups of undocumented immigrants. The immigration battle is being waged on 2 sides. To begin with, whether or not Texas even has the right to sue the federal government. And secondly, the question of if the president's program would grant undocumented immigrants, quote, lawful presence, end quote. U.S. Solicitor General Donald Verrilli, stated, quote, what we're doing is defining the limits of discretion, end quote, meaning that they are redefining exactly who the government can or cannot deport. However, Justice Samuel Alito said, quote, how is it possible to lawfully work in the United States without lawfully being in the United States, end quote. So guys, does Texas have the right to sue the federal government in this case? And what's your take on this issue of undocumented immigrants receiving what they say, or they quote it as being lawful presence? Michael, what are your thoughts here?
I think that it's a very kind of borderline issue. It sort of is, there's a lot of different issues intersecting here.
Well, obviously, yeah, it's on 2 different fronts right now. It's whether or not the Texas can sue the government because of this, and also based on whether or not, well, I mean, obviously, I understand the disagreement with the illegal immigrants with their lawful presence. So I understand why there's concern with that, because technically they're not legal. They're not legally here. They're already illegal immigrants in the first place, and then they're going to be granted. I'm pretty sure the executive order mandates 3 years here in the United States and they'll be able to have driver's license and whatnot. So that, to me personally, the fact that they're illegal in the first place, they came here illegally, that doesn't make sense to me why they would be granted lawful presence, because they didn't technically go through. There's so many immigrants going through the process right now to actually become legal citizens, and the fact that they're just going to be able to just have a driver's license just like that's kind of ridiculous to me.
Do you guys think that maybe this might be just an issue of whether President Obama is trying to fulfill his promises that he made during his campaign run to to really tackle this immigration battle that's been going on for years and years now, and basically trying to appease, I guess, a lot of these undocumented immigrants that basically fell in line, maybe voted for him, or family members were able to vote for him with the hopes of basically bringing this to fruition. Sarah, what do you think?
I can see that. There's laws put in place for a reason, and the fact that we're going around these laws to let them in, like you said, there are people that are going through the process, the correct process, to come here legally and get the green card or whatever it is, and they're coming here. And then you have people coming illegally, and they're totally going around the process, and now they're getting driver's license. And so I think if there's a law, the law should be followed.
I think that there's, it's definitely true that America is a great place. Everybody wants to come here, and that's a good thing because it's a land of opportunity and a safe haven for a lot of people from different countries. I think that this issue is complicated because we're talking about a society where, there are strict rules against deportation and stuff. And we're living in a country where we don't have exact systems set up for this kind of thing. So while there is an issue of immigration here and immigration reform, we still have to do something about these people that are here. And it's pretty clear that we're not just going to ask everybody to leave. That's unrealistic.
Right. Yeah.
So I do believe that something needs to be done to sort of start to assimilate these people into a legal sort of citizenship, and something has to get the ball rolling in terms of that. And so I think that driver's licenses is a great way to start because it's such an approachable, it's such a common thing that everybody needs. Do you know what I'm saying? Everybody uses one.
Right. So speaking of driver's license, my hairdresser's mom's friend, if you could follow that, she was driving, casual one day, and she got into a car accident with an immigrant who was driving a car that was not registered, didn't pass smog, and the car was bought illegally off of a lot or something. It didn't go through the registration, I guess, and got totally totaled. And the insurance company can't cover it at all. Cannot cover the damages whatsoever. So this lady, who is a U.S. citizen, has to cover out of her budget for the price that we pay for these immigrants coming because he was just driving a car and then rammed into her. And because he doesn't have a driver's license or a correct form of ID, he can't be monetarily held accountable.
Right.
So I think that's it's just kind of scary and
it definitely opens the
too.
door for a lot of I guess unforeseen ramifications when it comes to you're having a lot of people out there now on the road that weren't there previously.
Right.
And maybe are used to driving a different way than what we drive here in California. And you're right, Morgan. A lot of times they don't follow the correct protocol when it comes to having proper insurance, making sure that their tags are even up to date, things like that. And it can really lead to a lot of problems down the line.
Exactly. So I think we just need to do something quick before keeps happening. So moving on, the situation in Flint, Michigan continues to grow, and now 3 Michigan officials have been criminally charged. 2 years after the city switched its source from Lake Huron to the poisonous Flint River, a move which poisoned over 100,000 residents. Michigan State Attorney General Billy Schweet announced that a city worker and 2 state officials will face multiple felonies. Charges include misconduct in office, which could carry a 5-year sentence behind bars, as well as charges regarding tampering with evidence and manipulating the water testing system. Meanwhile, Michigan Governor Rick Snyder, who has not been charged, called the charges, quote, deeply troubling and extremely serious, end quote, but said his administration, quote, encouraged the investigations, end quote. The charges came about just 1 week after the Michigan State Congress came under fire for approving a budget without any significant aid to Flint. So a lot of people think that Governor Snyder should be held accountable. And then another thing to look at is 100,000 people were affected. And this was years ago. Why is it still an issue? Why is it taking so long? What do you guys think should be done? Quick now.
This is something that completely boggles my mind. I don't know how this is still such an issue. I understand it should be in the news. I'm not saying it shouldn't be in the news. I just can't believe that this issue hasn't been resolved by now. It's an absolute failure of the government at so many different levels. I think that the governor should be held responsible. It's not my job to say he should be brought up on charges or not, but he definitely should be held responsible ultimately for this action because it comes to him. All of these different things that happened, it all ends up at his office. And I think that it's pretty ridiculous situation. I can't believe that it's 2 years running. People are still sick. People have irreversible symptoms that are never going to be fixed. And because of the financial situation in Flint, there has been no rush to help these people, and I think that it's ridiculous. I can't even believe it.
Yeah, this screams of, reminds me anyway, of two recent scandals that happened right here in Southern California. The first one being back in 2010 with the city of Bell. And that had a lot to do with the council members increasing their salaries at the taxpayers' expenses without them even realizing it. It took an independent investigation by the LA Times to look into this matter, and which they actually, I believe, won like a Pulitzer Prize for the reporting on it. But yeah, they just finalized. It was about a couple years ago that they finally sentenced the last member of that council to jail for his part in that. And then it also, that has to do with taxpayer money. When it comes to people's health, I mean, you're talking about a completely different type of ballgame.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's something that really should never be overlooked. And recently, you had the methane gas leak, for instance, up near Pasadena.
Yeah.
And that case now, from what I understand, they are suing the gas company for that. So the gas company is going to be hit for the bill there, but you kind of wonder, okay, who above that is going to be held accountable? And it always comes down, I think, to a lot of bureaucratic red tape. These things tend to play out very slowly. And of course, when you throw in the fact that it's going to be in the legal system, it can drag out for even many, many years. So it's a shame that it's taken this long. You're right, Michael, for something for this to happen.
Well, with the gas leak, I mean, I know it took a while, but it didn't take years for them to fix it. And so now it's fixed, and yes, people are still dealing with health problems because of it. But the people in Flint, I feel so bad for them because they've been living with it for years, and now they have health problems that are going to last a lifetime for some cases. They just need to fix the problem. Whoever is up there in the government in Flint needs to be held accountable because this should have been fixed when it started.
Well, I think it's kind of funny because Governor Snyder is actually, he took home, I'm pretty sure, five gallons of Flint water, purified Flint water, and he said that he's going to drink it for the next 30 days. So is this his way?
Drink it for 60.
Is this his way of apologizing, or that's the interesting part?
I think it's grandstanding. I think it's just trying to make, it's diverting the issue. This water was rerouted to help people put money in their own pockets. It was a decision that was made out of greed and corruption.
Right.
And I believe that everybody that is involved in greed and corruption, whether it's in Bell or in Flint, should be removed from office at the very least, let alone charged with some kind of criminal activity. Him doing that 30-day thing, go for it.
Either way, children that are currently developing, the water is not good for them. It's going to affect them more than it is for someone that's older, obviously, because their brain's still developing and whatnot. And if they're getting lead poisoning or whatever the problems are in the water, then that's going to affect them more than it's going to affect him in the grand scheme of life. So.
And now he's just now doing a 30-day thing where he's drinking it. Where was he getting his water before?
Yeah, and also he gets to choose to do this 30-day challenge, right? He gets to choose to bring a certain portion of water in to drink. These people didn't get to choose to do this.
And he's purifying it.
Yeah, and he's purifying it.
A lot of people are like, this is just a PR stunt.
It is a PR stunt. I totally agree.
But like, it's so sad to me. Like, you're just now doing this. It's just
all to just stay in office. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Morgan brought a good point up earlier too about the fact that Flint is such an impoverished area of Michigan. It kind of makes you wonder, okay, if this happened, let's say here in Los Angeles or New York or another major metropolitan city in the United States, would it have taken this long? Right?
I don't think so. I really don't because there's like more people, obviously.
I don't think it ever would have happened. I don't think this ever would have happened if it was in an affluent.
But that's sad though, just because they're a smaller city, like. There's still people.
We're definitely blessed to be where we're at and whatnot, but I think this is completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
But moving on here, the Pentagon has okayed strikes against ISIL that could put more civilians in the line of fire. According to USA Today, the Pentagon has delegated more authority to Army Lieutenant General Sean McFarland to approve targets even when there is a risk that civilians could be killed. Before the change, there were limited cases in which civilian casualties were allowed, whereas this legislation allows for up to 10 civilian deaths. David Deptula, a retired 3-star Air Force general, said, quote, easing the restrictions was a necessary but insufficient step towards defeating the Islamic State, end quote. An issue that commanders must consider before attacking is the target's, quote, non-combatant value, end quote. A value of 0 means that there is no chance of a civilian casualty, while a value of 10 could mean a probability of 10 civilian deaths. The increased tolerance of civilian casualties coincides with the U.S. focus on capturing major areas of both Iraq and ISIL-controlled capital of Raqqa, Syria. The current airstrike campaign has won back 40% of ISIL, which claimed lands as well as the killings of 3 Islamic State top commanders. So obviously there's an ethical issue here, but do you think that this is justified because of what's been going on? The 40% land that comes back and the 3 top ISIL generals. So this is a very, very important topic to talk about. So what's you guys' take on this?
Sarah, do you want to start this off?
It's tough. It's just when you go from 0 to 10, and one, how are they counting how many people are in that area? Like, how do you know, okay, there's 10, it's a go, like we can do it. Or no, there's 11, we can't do it. How are you counting? Like, what if someone walks in last minute into the area, now you're over your 10 limit? I think the best way to do it is to kind of just maybe stick with the 0, because you're cutting down on the casualties for the innocent people that are living around that area.
Well, yeah, we were talking to a staff member yesterday about how who was in the military, and he said that they're the ones that determine the CSUF, which is the civilian casualties, and they determine whether or not they can shoot a missile when they're flying in an aircraft. And he said that he was part of that team that was the deciding factor, which is super interesting. That he said that as soon as they determined that there was a 0 CSUF, so they were able to shoot the target that they wanted to, but they realized that someone walked outside of their house and they realized that was civilian. So since the missiles are laser guided, they had to divert it instantly. So I mean, at least there's a team that's on it, like up to the very second.
Right.
But the interesting thing is that I'm kind of torn, because the fact that they've gained 40% land back from ISIL, as well as also killing the top 3 main ISIL
commanders,
figures, commanders and everything. I think that's kind of that. I feel like that kind of justifies it in a way. Obviously, no one should be killed for that. For no reason, but at the same time, there have been suicide bombings that innocent people have been killed at. So I think it's somewhat justified in that sense, because that's completely ridiculous.
Yeah. What's most shocking to me about this entire story is the fact that the Pentagon is even discussing, civilian casualties, during these airstrikes, and it really. There should really be no civilian casualties at all when you're dealing with something like this. I mean, ideally, and when you hear about reports about civilian casualties happening, it's funny because of course there's initial outrage, primarily of course with the countries that are being bombed by the United States.
Yeah.
But here in the United States, I don't think people pay much attention to it. So it really is shocking that the Pentagon is allowing this level of transparency when it comes to their operations.
Yeah.
I almost think maybe the declaration of this type of rule could be the Pentagon trying to kind of think ahead in terms of controversy that may surround certain airstrikes in the future, where they get sort of flack for civilian casualties. Do you think that maybe this move is sort of a move on their part to?
Well, they could be planning something big in some sort of
you never know.
Yeah, some sort of urban area. That's the only thing.
It's a crazy,
that brings up a good point though. But that's why the only thing that I feel like justifies it is the fact that there have been suicide bombings in the name of ISIS and pledging their allegiance here in like all those countries in Europe and everything. I think that's. So me personally, that's my personal take on it.
Yeah. So. I think they're just fed up with this entire situation already, and they're just trying to find any means possible, any route they can take to end this, and as quickly as possible. And my sister right now actually is in Turkey. She teaches English over there.
Really?
And she was just in close to Ankara, where there was a recent terrorist bombing there, or suicide bombing. So to me, it's like, okay, let's get this thing over and done with. Right? I think you can all the rest of us can agree with that, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a fine line. It's a fine line for the government to walk, because they get brought under fire when they don't do anything about these attacks that happen and American people pass away, and they get in trouble when they make announcements like this. So you can never win. Cal State Fullerton's annual communications event took place this week on campus. The 38-year-old tradition, which is housed in the TSU Pavilion, is sponsored by both the College of Communications and the Career Center. And students who participated were able to take part in countless info sessions, speaking events, networking opportunities, and even an alumni panel. The event was shortened considerably this year due to the potentiality of a CSU faculty strike, which was canceled last minute. However, the schedule changes were no match for students who got the most out of this unique communications experience. The event is set to take place again next year with more engagements in advertising, broadcasting, journalism, entertainment and tourism, human communications, cinema, and much more.
CNN reports Prince, who pioneered the Minneapolis sound and took on the music industry in his fight for creative freedom, died Thursday at age 57. Quote, "It is with profound sadness that I am confirming that the legendary, iconic performer Prince Rogers Nelson has died at his Paisley Park residence this morning at the age of 57, end quote, said his publicist Yvette Noel Scheer. Prince won 7 Grammy Awards and earned 30 nominations. 5 of his singles topped the charts and 14 other songs hit the top 10. He won an Oscar for Best Original Song Score for Purple Rain. From all of us here at Titan Communications, we offer our deepest condolences to Prince's family and friends."
Historic news from the U.S. Treasury Department. Treasury Secretary Jake Lew announced Wednesday that the $20 bill will now prominently feature Harriet Tubman, who will replace Andrew Jackson. Jackson, who has come under fire for his harsh treatment of Native Americans, will now be featured on the back of the bill. The $5 bill will still feature Abraham Lincoln, but the back of that bill will now feature multiple civil rights figures, including Martin Luther King Jr., Marian Anderson, and Eleanor Roosevelt. And while the $10 bill will still feature Alexander Hamilton, it will also add tributes to the leaders of the suffrage movement, including Lucretia Mott, Sojourner Truth, Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Alice Paul. The changes comes after years of calls from activists to include members of the civil and women's rights movements, and marks the first time an African-American woman will be featured on U.S. currency. The change is set to take effect by 2020 on the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote. So, Michael, you went on campus to talk about the changes to the new bills.
I did.
What did you find out?
So, yeah, it was an interesting experience to go and see what people thought. I personally think Oprah Winfrey should be on every American bill, but let's take a look at what the people of Cal State Fullerton had to say about this new change.
Earlier this week, the U.S. Department of Treasury announced plans to change the $5, $10, and $20 bills, with a change that includes removing President Andrew Jackson from the 20 and adding Harriet Tubman in his place. We wanted to come on campus and see what the students of Fullerton thought about this change.
I think it's a good idea in general, just because there's just a lot of influence from these people, other than just, simply being a president.
Of course, I feel like there's not as much representation on our U.S. currency because there's been a lot of political activists from different ethnicities, different religions, different backgrounds, and I think it's awesome that they're doing that so that everyone can be represented.
I think that more women and people of color should be represented on our bills, just because we are such a nation of so many varieties of types of people, and that we should have more representation on things that we use every day.
I think it's nice because it's the first woman, and we lack that in government.
I think it's a welcoming change, especially during the, this time of a lot of racial unrest in this country, I guess.
I think it's good. It's about time that we've shown more diversity and more representative of the population that we have here in the United States.
It's going to be interesting to see the change and what people think about it, especially, in different parts of the world, or in the different parts of the United States.
So I think it kind of preserves American history, as well as celebrating everyone now, the generations now, what everyone's interested in. So it's great.
I think it's really great that we're bringing in more parts of history than before. Before it was kind of just the presidents, and now we're adding all parts that make up America.
Absolutely, because there's a lot of things that make up America, right? And if you could add anybody that you could think of to American currency, who would it be?
Rosa Parks.
Martin Luther King.
I'm gonna say Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson.
Can't go wrong with
So we can just have a whole celebrity line of currency.
Oprah Winfrey, definitely.
Always Oprah Winfrey.
Maybe Corky Gonzalez.
Beyonce. Oprah, if you're watching this,
We want your face.
we want your face on every piece of currency, right?
Dollar bill.
He embodies the American dream.
Coins too, yeah.
Maybe JFK someday. Yeah.
JFK.
Yeah, because this generation will remember, but, for future generations.
Well, there you have it. The people of Fullerton have spoken. Overwhelming support for the change, and even some creative names thrown in there for future U.S. currency. I'm Michael Groover reporting on campus for The Report.
Some interesting opinions for sure. What do you, ladies and gentlemen, think? Do you?
Oh, if it's Oprah, you get a 20, and you get a 20, and you get a 20.
And then Ellen on the back or something.
There we go. Some powerful women. It's definitely a good move.
No, I think it's great though because Andrew Jackson, he was not the nicest guy in the world. You know, the fact that he was kind of responsible for the Trail of Tears, which was the genocide of Native Americans. So that's kind of.
But the fact that he's still on the back, like, come on, take him off.
Well, I think that's tradition at that point because, I mean, I like his hair, so.
You heard it here first.
Well, initially, you guys, the Alexander Hamilton was set to be replaced by a woman. You know, that was what the Treasury Department had decided a couple months back. It looks like they've changed course now, and they've maybe fallen or given
you know what?
to public opinion there.
I believe that it was Lin-Manuel, I'm blanking on his last name, the writer of Hamilton, the musical.
Oh, right.
I believe he made a really grand, public statement asking them not to change it. Yeah.
Well, he is the founder of our Treasury, you know, and although he never served as a president or anything beyond, higher than the Secretary of the Treasury, he was our first. And I think to remove Hamilton from the very currency that he helped establish would really tarnish his legacy, would tarnish the legacy of the Department of Treasury in the United States. So they made a right choice, I think, in ultimately replacing Andrew Jackson. Like you mentioned, Evan doesn't have exactly the greatest track record in the U.S. history here. And it's great. I mean, you have a woman now on paper currency. So long overdue. Yeah,
she's such a good public figure too.
Oh my goodness.
She just stands for so much. So
such a
go
fierce
woman.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as much as you guys want Oprah on it, unfortunately, she would have to be dead in order to be considered.
Oh,
that's true, and that's never going to happen.
Okay, we'll just wait for her, and then we'll just do the changes when she's gone. She's my idol. Sorry, Oprah, if you ever see this. You're my idol.
Well, that does it for our 7th episode of The Report. But as always, we will see you in 2 weeks with more news, views, and info. Until then, I'm Adrian Islas.
I'm Sarah Fenton.
I'm Morgan Klein.
I'm Evan Boydson.
And I'm Michael Groover. Stay fresh, Fullerton.